The Pentagon is also putting the focus on China, and it's shaping the latest budget proposal. Acting Defense Secretary says he wants to even shift the military's focus to China. Now, Shanahan also wants to spend $25 billion on nuclear weapons, in part to stay ahead of China's arsenal. It may even join the United States and Russia as the only nations with air, sea, and land-based nukes. To break it all down, we go to investigative journalist Ben Swann. Thank you for joining us, Ben. Okay, so why does the U.S. military see China as such a threat?
I think because the U.S. military needs to find new threats all around the world that require increased budgets year after year after year. And think about the numbers here, which are astronomical. So the Pentagon is seeking a new record high $718 billion for their 2020 defense budget. This year, the 2019 budget is $716 billion. And yet China, the country they say is such a threat, China, they say the military that they have to be able to keep up with, only has a defense budget of $177 billion. We have a proposed budget 6 times their size so that we can keep up with them. I don't know who's designing their equipment versus ours, but it sounds like we're spending a lot of money to keep up with somebody who has a much smaller military.
Well, that's the thing, Ben. Right now, while we're saying we're supposed to be de-escalating in Syria, de-escalating in Afghanistan, now there's a lot of threats around the world. It's really interesting that they're coming up with this highest budget in the military while he reduced domestic spending on others. So is this budget for $25 billion for nuclear weapons, supposedly to compete with China's growing nuclear arsenal, isn't it kind of concerning that the U.S. would also be growing its nuclear arsenal then?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely concerning. Again, we're talking about $718 billion they're asking for. You just mentioned it. As part of that, $25 billion in new nuclear weapons would be added to this. And the claim being made by the Pentagon is, well, China is trying to develop their nuclear arsenal. But, you mentioned this a minute ago. So right now, there are only 2 countries in the world that have land, air, and sea capabilities when it comes to nuclear weapons, the United States and Russia. China, according to the Pentagon, is seeking to become the 3rd country to have that capability. And so our response to that is, well, we need another $25 billion in nuclear capability. And again, look at the language being used by the Pentagon saying that we have to keep up with China who is behind us in terms of the technology, China who is behind us in terms of the kinds of weapons they have, and China that is vastly behind us in terms of budget. So we need to spend to keep up. Those 2 phrases don't seem to go together.
Well, that's the question. When you're looking about the discussion that was going on in the Senate room when this budget was proposed, the majority of the discussion was about using military funds for a border wall. None of the discussion was actually talking about pay raises for our senators or pay raises for our soldiers, or actually helping out our soldiers, our veterans. This is all about just tangible items that people can purchase. So do you think this indicates that senators are not as interested in China as the Pentagon may be?
Well, I think senators are not as interested in it because, let's face it, when they go on all of the mainstream news shows as talking heads, right, they want to talk about issues like the border wall, whether they love it or whether they hate it. What they don't want to do is they don't want to sit there in front of the cameras and talk about China as being another boogeyman across the world, who, by the way, is not involved in any provocation towards the United States. Some of the claims being made by the Pentagon, China is militarizing islands in the South China Sea. And how's that a threat to the United States? Remember, this is our defense budget. And so I think a lot of those senators did not care. They wanted to talk about the border wall. And what they really don't talk about, really what needs to be talked about, and you just alluded to it, is what are we doing to take care of the men and women who have fought in our military, who are coming back here with substandard health care, with mental health issues that need to be dealt with physical ailments that need to be dealt with. What are we doing to take care of that? That is a looming problem that will cost us trillions of dollars in the future. And right now, Congress continues to ignore those issues. Instead, they keep talking about, new nuclear weapons, new weapons that we need to be forging.
And Ben, what they're not talking about, which is the most expensive of all, are human lives that would be involved in this. Right. And that is priceless. Thank you so much for following this.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.